Alright, so for this, guys, I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in so I can just kind of look at the eyes. You want to have a scrap piece of paper. You want to have a 4H pencil. Okay, kind of hard to see. Oh, there it is. 4H pencil. You want a 3B pencil. Kind of hard to see. And then a 6B pencil. Okay. I'm also going to have, you want to have like a pink eraser. If you haven't grabbed one already from the container, and then you probably noticed in your cups there were some kneaded erasers, these gray erasers. So go ahead and grab those. I am going to show you guys how you can use these. A lot of people don't know how to use them, and then because of that they end up kind of ruining their projects. So, I'll give you a quick little demo on how to use these. Remove my drawing. Alright, so when you use these, I'm just going to take a 6B pencil. I'm going to show you guys. Kind of zoom into this. So I'm just going to say here, I'm going to kind of plug in some 6B on this paper, real heavy. I'm going to put a lot of pressure down on it. So what a kneaded eraser does is that it doesn't actually erase, away completely something. If you want to erase something completely away, you want to use the pink eraser, okay? Now the problem with graphite is a lot of times if you have a lot of layers on something like this, like right now, that 6B little swatch I've got, if I try to go in there with the pink eraser and erase that, most likely what I end up doing is just smudging it all around, okay? So you do need to treat this, even though we're using graphite pencils, it's not as easy as like using a regular pencil, writing something down, erasing it, and it going away. Graphite pencil, a lot different, okay? It doesn't exactly go away. What a kneaded eraser does is it helps you lighten stuff. So, for example, if you shade something and you feel like it got too dark, what you can do is take your kneaded eraser. I'm going to take this kneaded eraser. And you're going to take this and you're basically going to kind of just kind of pick up the loose layers on top. So I'm not going to take my eraser, my kneaded eraser across my paper like this, side to side, because again I'll just end up smudging all of that media. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put it on top of there, and I'm going to just kind of dab the kneaded eraser on top of that layer of graphite, and what it's going to do is lighten it. So you can just see how much I lightened. It's quite a lot, actually. Which actually is pretty surprised. So you can lighten it. I've probably lightened this up by about half, and then what you can do is take that kneaded eraser, and if you want to even lighten it up more, kind of expose new areas of the kneaded eraser, and it can even pick up more. And you can feel it when you're moving around. It's kind of sticky, but that's what helps it pick up the graphite. So you can see you can kind of pick up quite a lot. I've used this sometimes to bring out highlights, that like really small highlights. The nice thing about the kneaded eraser is that you can kind of mold this and shape this to any size you want. It's nice to get into like really small areas that a regular eraser can't get into, so that's what's nice about it. Alright, so that's how you use the kneaded eraser. Alright, so what we're going to do first, okay, and I'm just going to work on one eye. When you guys work on your shading your eyes, you should be working on both, but to help kind of expedite the demo, I'm just going to work on one eye. You guys, again, should be working on both. So whatever you're doing to the left eye, make sure you're doing the same thing to the right eye, and that'll just keep it consistent, okay? I am going to take my pink eraser, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm basically going to erase over my drawing. I'm going to take away all my guidelines. So I want to erase all of these. I'm just going to kind of do this whole eye area. And then the next thing I'm going to do, and if you wanted to, it's kind of nice to use just a pencil eraser to get into some of those tight areas if you need to. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pink eraser, I'm going to put it just kind of on its belly, so to speak, and I'm just going to take it over my entire drawing like this and basically lighten up all my lines. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because, again, I do not want my facial features, any of them, to look like they are outlined. Because if they do look like they're outlined, it's going to make my facial features look really flat. And I'm going to look more like a cartoon than I will a realistic drawing. So I'm not going for that cartoon style, so I want to lighten all of this up. So you'll still be able to see your pencil lines, and that's the important part. But you just want to lighten it up quite a lot. Kind of zoom into this. There we go. Now my lines are extra dark just because I did that on purpose for the demo, so hopefully yours are lighter. Okay, so the first thing I like to do, and again there's a million ways to go about this, is I'm going to start with my 4H pencil first, and I'm basically going to use this to kind of map out all my shadows. I'm going to actually start with, I'm not going to start with my 4H pencil. We're going to start with just the middle of our eye. So we're going to do the pupil first, which is the black part of your eye, and then we'll go out to the color part of your eye, which is the iris. Okay. So when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, a lot of you guys will notice that you have highlights, or like what I call the bright and shinies, hitting your eyeball, and it's because your eye's wet, so it's highly reflective. So you're going to get kind of these glares or these shapes that just kind of interrupt the shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to figure out where those are at, and I'm going to actually draw those in so I can work around them. Now I draw them a little bit bigger than what I need them to be, because I find that, at least for me, when I shade this stuff, I end up kind of losing them. So that's why I'm going to make these shapes bigger than what they need to be. So find those highlights. So I'm going to draw these in. Again, I draw them bigger than what they need to be. I've got a couple. Now, if you do perhaps lose these while we're shading, we can try to bring them back by just taking a little dab of like white acrylic paint and just slapping it on there, and we're good to go. So. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 3B pencil, and even though that my pupil's really dark, I'm going to start with my 3B. It's not my darkest pencil, but I can still get pretty dark here. I'm going to start with this. I think the important thing with this part, guys, is that a lot of people think that just because it's the pupil, you should just go right in and make it black just right at the beginning, and that's not the case. You do want to still show some variation. Now, I do find also, too, when you're working on such a small area like this, it probably would be helpful to have your pencil sharpened a bit. So that's what I'm going to do actually right now, sharpen my pencils a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to start with my 3B pencil. And I'm just going to go ahead and start shading this in, keeping in mind where the highlights need to be. I'm going to work around those. And again, you guys should be working on both of your pupils. And then I'll go in with my 6B to kind of bring in the really, really dark part. So I do want to give it some variation. It's a little hard. I'm getting a glare off the light to see. that's good. Maybe that helps a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. Turn the light back on. All right, so it really doesn't take that long. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start moving out to our iris. So when I'm talking to you about the iris, I want you guys to look at yourself in the mirror so you guys can see it. But when you're looking at your iris, for a lot of you guys, you'll notice that you actually have like a darker kind of outline around your iris. And then it's the middle section's a little bit lighter. The other thing, too, that you'll probably notice is that you can kind of see some line work in this, like almost bands of color, just sort of like radiating out from the pupil. So I'm going to take that stuff in consideration. The other thing, too, you want to think about is the color of your eye. So this is where we're going to talk about tonal value. It was easy with the pupil because it's pretty dark, but now we need to talk about the color of your eye. So if you have a lighter color, so if you have like light green eyes, light blue eyes, light gray eyes, you're going to notice that your eye isn't going to be as dark, okay? If you have medium to light brown eyes, again, you want to make sure that your overall value is medium to light. If you have dark blue eyes, dark green eyes, dark brown eyes, again, that's going to be reflected in the value of your iris. So you're going to go a little bit darker in your value, okay? You do want to look at, and I do like to kind of compare the value or the color of my iris to the pupil. Since the pupil is so dark, it's a nice kind of like point of measurement. So I will compare and ask myself, well, just how much different is my iris color from my pupil color? And I'll think about value again. So what I like to do, okay, and I'm going to start with, because my outline's a little dark, I'm going to go ahead and start with my 3B. I like starting with my 3B. It's kind of a safe place to start. And I'm going to start with my outline first. And when I look at this, it's not a really, it's not a super defined outline. It's a little bit fuzzy. So I want to make sure that I take that in consideration. The other thing, too, I'm going to take in consideration is that it is not the same thickness basically all the way through. I see some variation in it. So I want to take all of that in consideration. Now, whenever I'm shading, again, I'm kind of playing with this as I draw it on here. I want to give myself a little room to either lighten or darken it, so I'm not going to take it all the way like I see it. I'm going to kind of give myself room again, like I said. So now what I'm going to do, I kind of got my outline established there. I want to now go in, and this is just for me because of my eye color. I kind of have like, I don't know, medium bluish gray eyes. I'm going to prep my 4H pencil here since I want to shade, and I'm kind of going to be working in a bigger area. I'm now going to go in with my 4H pencil, and I'm going to kind of shade, and I'm going to start like with the pupil and kind of work out from that, and just kind of like bring it out to the outside. So I can kind of get that band look. So I don't want it to be, I don't want it to exactly be all nice and smooth because I do see some kind of line and marks in there. And then I'm just going to go through and start kind of filling in some of this stuff. My eyes are not necessarily the same value all the way through, so there's some patchiness to them. I'm going to include that. And I'm going to switch back and forth between my pencils depending on what I feel like I need, what value I need. And I think, too, using those highlights that you might have seen in your eye is another good sort of like point of measurement to use. You can compare and contrast, ask yourself, like right now I'm having a hard time seeing them, but that's probably because I need to make the areas around them darker. So that's helping me figure out just how dark I need to go. It's kind of hard to see this. I can't decide. You guys, can you see it very well with the light on that I have, or is it better? Here, I'll show you. Or does that show up better for you? You like it with or without the light? Right now I have it without the light. Huh? With? Without? Okay, I'll keep it off. It's that graphite. The problem with the graphite is that it reflects. It's kind of shiny, so. That's making my eyes a little bit darker. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, it's not going to obviously take me that long because you guys are doing two and I'm just doing one. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to kind of mess around with both of your pupils and irises, and then we'll go back and kind of work our way out. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So what I'm going to do is just kind of move out. So we're going to talk about the white part of our eye. A lot of people make a mistake with this and they think, okay, it's the white of my eye, I don't have to do anything to it. That would be incorrect, okay? You have to, even though it's white, it's still shaded. And again, you have to remember that your eyeball is literally like, and this is going to sound goofy, but it's right, it's like a bouncy ball stuck in your eye socket. So this is like a sphere, okay? So when you look at this, and I'm just going to kind of point to my eye here. When you look at this, this is the closest point to us, okay, is the middle. But as it goes off to the sides, that ball is going back, okay, so it's going back, so it's going to get shaded. It's not only going to get shaded, it's not only going to be darker here in the corners, but you're also going to get a shadow from under the eyelid, because the eyelid is like a roof for your eye. That's basically what it is. It's a roof. It covers your eye. So because of that, you always get a little shadow right underneath your eyelid, okay? So what I'm going to do, it's not a whole lot. It actually depends too. Like if you got a really dramatic shadow over the whole section of your head, like the whole side, then this might even be even darker, okay? But you have to look at yourself in the mirror to decide that, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my 4H pencil. I'm just going to make sure I've got a nice shading edge with it. So I'm going to prep it. And what I'm going to do is I am going to make the corners of my eye just a little darker here. And I'm just doing this on the white of the eye. I'm also going to do this right in here. Now I've got a highlight that I can see. It goes right on top of my iris and the white of my eye. So if I can see that, then that means that everything around it needs to be darker so I can see it. So this whole section of my eye is going to get sort of shaded in. And then we're going to move right along to our tear duct. Now our tear duct is that little fleshy corner of our eye. Again, you got to think about tonal value. Just what's its overall value? Now that you've got your iris plugged in there, you can kind of compare the two and just ask yourself in general, which one is darker? Is my iris darker than my tear duct? Is it darker than, or is my tear duct darker than my pupil? Like which way, where is it? Where does it sit? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and plug that in. So I'm just going to do that little section. I'm going to go ahead and start with my 3B. Since I've kind of shaded a lot of 4H around this, if I do 4H, I'm probably going to lose that corner. The other thing, too, is you'll actually see, and this is going to sound really kind of gross, actually, but you have a couple different kind of sections, or little layers of skin in there. So if you need to, break that up, depending on what you see. Seems like I've got a couple sections here. And the chances are that the corner of your eye might be pretty dark. Who knows? Mine's actually pretty dark in this, on this particular eye. And there's nothing really super light about my tear duct, so. Okay, so it doesn't take too long. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and start working with the top eyelid. Now, a lot of you guys might be wondering, when are we going to start working on the eyelashes? Those are typically last, so typically last. Try to get rid of a couple of things. All right, so now what I'm going to do, when you look at this top eyelid, so I'm talking about, let me point with my 4H pencil, talking about this section right here. I'm going to kind of just fill in the area right above here. So from the bottom of my top eyelid to the crease, I'm going to deal with that first. Now, even though this is a crease, I really don't want it to look like an outline. So one of the things that you can do to prevent it from just looking at an outline is notice how the value changes, even in that crease. So I'm going to go ahead and just, again, I'm going to start with my 4H because I'm going to kind of work this out. I'm going to kind of shade in this area here. And I can see in some areas of the crease is that it's a little bit thicker in some areas and lighter or thinner in others. So I'm going to kind of play that up. So I just kind of map that out, and then I'm going to take my 3B pencil And anything that needs to go, I need to make a little bit darker, I'm going to go in and make it a little bit darker. And at any time, guys, if you feel like you need to go sharpen your pencils, feel free to get up and do that. All right, so now what I'm going to do, now that I've got that crease sort of established, now I'm going to work on just shading this area in between. Now, this edge here with my eyelid is pretty dark. One of the reasons I do have eyeliner on, and then the other reason is because I have mascara on and I've got eyelashes there. So I'm going to go ahead and darken this just so I can see this edge a little bit better. And kind of darken that. And then I'm going to go in and kind of shade this area in according to what I see it needs. So I'm going to look for the areas that need to be darker. I think I got a little too dark there. Oh, I don't know. There it is. There. And now what I'm going to do too, so I'm going to go up and kind of deal with this inner corner, like this corner of my eye here. And then this area right above here. So I'm going to start hopefully shaping out that form. And again, I want to look at just how the shadows are wrapping around the form. So I'm just going to kind of go in initially with my 4H pencil, map this stuff out. So I'm looking at the shapes the shadows are making. This is also, too, the time where I start to see stuff I need to kind of revise and add in a little bit more. All right, so we're just going to stop for today, and then we will continue later.